I think that is really interesting because a lot of people think, culture doesn't matter. It does. It really matters. And a lot of things, I'll use kind of this company as an example, kind of, do you allow people to work from home? Do you have people work in the office, right? Your corporate structure is supporting these frontline employees. Well, these frontline employees show up rain or shine. They show up whether there's a heat wave, they're there 5+ days a week, right? And so it's actually a really cool driving force as you make decisions as an organization to challenge yourself to say, what is happening at the front, right? Because without the front, the company doesn't exist. And so it's a fun shift in thinking about culture as you support the front and having that mass amount. That's been a learning for me, having a 3,000 plus employees that really make or break the productivity of an organization. It's a lot of pressure to get the culture right.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we talk about culture matters. And in fact, everyone that you have inside your company has a responsibility to create the culture, to shape the culture, to address and weed out those that are not a part of the culture. Today, our special guest is Jamie Hubbard. She is an expert in the world of HR. She's had many high-level HR function jobs. Currently, she's with Boart, long year, and she is really someone I would look to for advice on how to do a culture turnaround. The mining company she's working for has about 5,000 workers, and they have a large number of them are blue collar. And so you may think that culture is necessary, but actually this company sees this as an absolute necessary for performance and for them to have a kind of place that people love to come to work to, and attracting top talent is to have a better culture than they have today. And so she's coming in to help them to really create that turnaround. One of the things that we look at in the culture matters conversation is that everyone has a responsibility to shape that culture. They also, she unpacks some information in there about how to give feedback. And so I think you want to really tune into that, maybe take some notes on the feedback part of it. It's different than my book on tough conversations, but one and the same. It's a great framework for you to look at and learn from, and even create your own frameworks as you engineer a culture turnaround in your own company. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. I do executive leadership alignment with executive teams, and we do manager to leader coaching as well. That may sound like a lot, but what we really specialize is we work with organizations that are growing fast and have a big opportunity on the horizon. And they've got to rally the team with alignment and a new way of even approaching work and leading people in order to make the most of that opportunity. So if that's you, let's have a conversation about what's going on in your company. I'd love to talk to you about it. I've worked with more Inc. 5,000 level companies than anyone in leadership development. So just go to gene@genehammett.com. That's my email address, and send me a little bit of information. We'll jump on a phone, talk about what's going on in your company. And everything I give you is customized and specific to you. Nothing's cookie cutter, but I have frameworks and tools I've been using for years that can help you accelerate your ability to understand these things and move forward. That's what I'm offering to you. It's absolutely free. I do it not because I want to sell you something, but I do it because I want to create relationships. I want to build trust. And if there is a way for me and my team to continue to serve you, then we'll discuss those at a later point. But if you reach out to me, we'll talk about what's going on and get you prepared for that opportunity. Gene@genehammett.com. Now here's the interview with Jamie. Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
We're going to have an incredible conversation today about trust. But I would like for you to frame in here the company that you work for. So tell us about Boart Longyear.
Yeah, I just started with them a little over probably a month and a half ago. They are a drilling company, so they get contracted by mines and different services to come in and drill for different core. It's a new industry for me. I come from retail, I come from manufacturing, so there's a little bit of that in this business. We're about 5,000 employees globally, about 37 countries, and we've been around over 100 and some years. Still onboarding, so I might have those facts a little skewed, but it's a very interesting dynamic and a lot of work to be done to continue to be number one in their industry.
And 5,000 employees in drilling, that's mostly blue collar or?
Yep, it's about over 3,000 blue collar. I started my career in education, so I was a special education teacher, and then I transitioned to a startup. We had about 100 employees. At about 300 employees, we got bought out by a parent company, so transitioned to about 5,000 employees. And then from there, now I'm at this global company. So it's just been a consistent trajectory of growth and trying to take on more and learn more. So yes, about 3,000, I would say, frontline employees.
When I think of blue collar, a lot of people might be making up that the culture isn't as important. When we're knowledge workers and white collar kind of things, cultures of, attracting that top talent, but blue collar has this mode of they're replaceable. But I also know that great blue collar people have a lot of experience and it's hard to replace those great talented people that especially have a lot of institutional knowledge. And so one of the things I think you're doing is just establishing and rebuilding the culture at the company. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think the blue collar concept is really interesting. I'll have to double check my fact here, so don't quote me, but there's something around it's like 80% of the workforce doesn't sit at a desk globally. Again, I'll go double check that, but and I think that is really interesting because a lot of people think, culture doesn't matter. It does. It really matters. A lot of things, I'll use kind of this company as an example, kind of, do you allow people to work from home? Do you have people work in the office, right? Your corporate structure is supporting these frontline employees. Well, these frontline employees show up rain or shine. They show up whether there's a heat wave, they're there 5+ days a week, right? And so it's actually a really cool driving force as you make decisions as an organization to challenge yourself to say, what is happening at the front, right? Because without the front, company doesn't exist. And so it's a fun shift in thinking about culture as you support the front and having that mass amount. That's been a learning for me, having a 3,000 plus employees that really make or break the productivity of an organization. It's a lot of pressure to get the culture right. So yes, I am working on helping the culture as this company goes through growth. And it's something that I've done at my prior organizations as well. How do you do change, right? How do you do growth? How do you continue to be successful?
Well, I love this concept of culture matters because it does. It matters to performance. It matters to bottom line. It matters to the experience at work. And we could probably even add on 5 more things. Just to kind of put a punctuation and strength on that culture matters. How would you frame it in for our audience?
So I used to do training. When I was at Tuft & Needle, it was an online mattress company. We disrupted the industry. It was very, very fun, fast moving. And it was an onboarding training. So every new hire had to go through this training. And the first question that we asked in the training was, what is culture? And we asked everybody, and all the answers were different. But there was this thread that went through it. And it had something to do with the way that you feel when you're at an organization. Some people could put words to it. It was behaviors, it was norms, it was all these different things. And often I would like to tell them that I had a mentor that told me, culture is the worst behavior you tolerate. And I liked that negative spin on it because it really made you think about, and so we would then go through this process of creating a hate list. What are all the things that you hated about culture at your prior organizations? And they were like, they were new. Like, you want me to bash my other companies? It was, nope, we don't need to know names or anything. Why would you never work there again culturally? And then we would create, let's fix it list. And then we would empower them to say, you're new here and you see this list of things that you want as part of this organization. You're empowered now. You have to help us enrich this organization, right? We own it too. And so I love that approach of it's the worst behavior you tolerate, because if you tolerate gossip, it bleeds through your organization. If you tolerate skirting around those difficult conversations, that is your culture. When that new guy walks in the door, or that new person walks in the door, that's exactly what they feel. And so it's really interesting to hear people's perspectives, because we all come from places that we've loved, places that we haven't, and empowering people to be part of that change, it goes a long way.
Such a great example of this. And we do definitely come from different places. Me being an executive coach, you're having, being on the front lines with, HR and the strategy and the tactics of HR. You're right now working to help with employee engagement. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at employee engagement across this, is this something you're measuring? And if so, how do you measure it?
So I think many people that listen to this podcast probably aren't new to the concept of an engagement survey. I think that engagement surveys are very important. However, the worst thing that a company can do is do an engagement survey and take no action. You're communicating to your employees, hey, we're ready to listen, but we're not ready to do anything that you've shared with us. And so it's one of the easiest ways to erode trust. And I've seen it over and over and over and over again. And so a lot of companies, they'll do these big annual surveys, and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on them, and then they don't do anything with the information. And so that's what I'm looking at right now at this organization is kind of the maybe unpopular opinion is let's not just create this, let's do this annual survey and kind of robotic check the box, right? It's more of what do we need? What information do we need? What feedback do we need? Let's build it based off of what circumstances we have going on right now. And what do we actually have the capability to address? Because that's reality too. If a company is going through change or you're going through rapid growth, you may not have all the resources in the world to address some of that feedback. So I always say, fewer, bigger, better. Start small, start with one focus area. Maybe it's employee development. Maybe it's just figuring out how to look at your benefits differently, right? Maybe it's a benefits survey. It depends on what the company's going through, but a lot of times we go so big, so fast. Let's get these programs in place. Let's mature. Let's do what everybody else is doing. And really, there's a lot to be learned from. Actually, there's a lot. It goes a long way. Let me rephrase that. It goes a long way with employees when you sit and listen and you say, you said, we did. Right? Here's what you said. Here's the program that we thought about. We involved you in the process of improvement, and now we're all part of that. We get to reap the benefits. So it's actually a little bit of a different approach than I've done in the past. I'm also kind of deconstructing the program, if you will.
I've been talking to Jamie about giving feedback, but let's talk about tough conversations. When you have a tough conversation on the horizon, you want to make sure you do it well, and you want the tools to do it effectively. This book that I wrote with my wife, Amanda, will help you do that. How to Have Tough Conversations is one of the best books I've ever written. I've written at least two, but I've had some other books that you wouldn't find anywhere. But I'm really proud of the work that's in this book. And if you have ever avoided a tough conversation or you want to put out your best foot forward, then you want to make sure you get this book wherever you buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, even Walmart.com. Check it out and get better at having tough conversations today. Back to Jamie. I love that you tie that into trust, because if you do a survey and you get some good insights and you do nothing, you're eroding trust. You don't even realize it, some people. And I know that you've worked with us in one of the executive virtual conversations we've had before about culture. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for that. So this is actually the first time we've seen each other face to face video. But you've got such experience with culture, and culture matters so much. You've also put up a lot of tools. You mentioned to me about sort of a checklist. I want to let you frame in the checklist, and let's walk through those 4 elements of the checklist that will help us understand your approach to rebuilding culture.
Sure. I can't claim to own the checklist. I did not develop it on my own. There was a team of people. When I started at Tough to Needle, there were a lot of, we had people from Apple and people from Google, and we kind of had all these different set of skills, and none of us had ever sold a mattress before. And so we all were, trying to figure out what is the place that we want to work for and how do we do that? And so a group of people got together and developed this checklist, and it was derived a little bit from our past experiences, a little bit from Brene Brown, a little bit from Tim Scott. I mean, all over the place in terms of the inspiration. And essentially we landed with this feedback checklist. And I know you're kind of an expert on difficult conversations. Well, the root of difficult conversations is being able to actually communicate through something challenging, right? Feedback, we contributed to, or we actually equated it to really just having a conversation. You could take the word feedback out of it, just say, we're communicating. And before you were going into a conversation around feedback, the ask was that each person ran through this checklist mentally. And we did trainings and different trust circles on these items. And the first one is vulnerability. And again, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Brene Brown. I will shout out to her all day long. But it's the willingness to open yourself up to potential harm, but not necessarily a weakness. You're not actually getting harmed. I might say I love you first, and that's vulnerable, and you might say it back and you might not, right? And that's the act of vulnerability, is being able to be open, bringing that wall down before you even enter into the conversation. The second one is action oriented. If I go into this conversation with you, Jean, I want to make sure that I'm not in it to just prove my point. There has to be some level of specificity. Hey, Jean, that PowerPoint was great. Doesn't do anything for you. Hey, Jean, that PowerPoint was great because it had all this detail, or because I'm a visual learner and you had awesome videos, right? That helps you understand what you want to maintain or what you might need to go gather more feedback on. The third one is anyone to everyone. So it's removing this barrier to power. I should be able to go up to the CEO and say, hey, that was a great town hall. It was really impactful and I took this away from it. Or, hey, I would love to hear more about this. Maybe next time you can elaborate on that. It doesn't mean that I can just walk up to him and bash him, right? It's not saying go troll people. It's not weaponizing feedback. Go build a relationship with him. If you're going to take from his bank, fill it up first, right? Build that trust. So there's a lot that's buried in here. And the last one is reality check. This one is my favorite. And we use that kind of check yourself before you wreck yourself. But it's assume positive intent, right? And it's that simple story. I'm driving and somebody cuts me off. And I'm like, oh, the jerk. You know, they were out together. They just cut me off. They don't even care. Well, I'm running away with that truth. That's my truth now. Instead, I go into the feedback conversation and I say to myself, you know what? I don't think that their intention is to cut me off. They probably had something that made them distracted. Maybe they were on the phone with their husband and their daughter was sick, right? Something that it wasn't actually them out to get me. And then I run away with that truth until I'm proven wrong. So before you head into that conversation, run through that checklist. And if the other person runs through that checklist, the conversation is wildly different. And you get an organization that's able to actually communicate through challenging situations, through innovation, and they're able to show up authentically and really get at what we're all here for, which is to help the company be successful and make an impact while doing so. So again, that was a lot packed into. We've had weeks of training on that topic, but it's one that I've brought with me in every endeavor that I have. And I'm grateful to the group that helped develop it because it's honestly even changed my personal life. I use it at home with my husband.
Jamie is talking about the reality checklist, and I love the way she's framed that in for you. But there's one element I want to give you from my coaching that might help you even more. The reality checklist is a lot of people will maybe see something negative right away. I'm going to ask you to take any interaction you have with another person and try to look at it through the lens of the best interpretation of that as possible. If someone cuts you off in a red light, you're going to interpret that as, you know, what a jerk they are. Okay. Yes. I've been there. You've been there. But what if you interpret that, you bend reality a little bit by saying that maybe they're having a tough day. Maybe they're late for a job interview and it's really important for them and they deserve to go ahead of you. It may not be true, but it helps you rationalize it. You don't get frustrated about those things. You would just say, hey, you know, take your time. And it can be used in so many situations. It's this bending reality I've worked with my clients over the years has helped me build trust, help me, you know, trust myself, help me deal with the setbacks I've had and the setbacks my clients have. And I have so many tools that can help you behind it. But I'm just giving you kind of a taste of this because it isn't just about your first, story that you make up for yourself. It's about finding the best story. And if you live from a place of, I'm going to find the best story of this, I think you'll be happier, be a little bit more optimistic, and the world will start bending to your favor because you're going to be happy to be around. So just 2 cents I wanted to add in there about, you know, the reality check piece and really having the best interpretation of that moment. Back to Jamie. I want to highlight on one piece of this. And I think that this is where a lot of people can really get something out of it. Culture matters. And it's not just you developing something and giving it as a teacher or even a facilitator. You collaborated with a team to come up with this checklist.
Yeah.
What was the process like of collaboration? Was it hard? Was it challenging in some way? Or was it just really smooth for the whole team to come together on this?
I'm actually really glad you asked that question. The deeper I've gotten into HR, the more I notice the perspective of HR will handle that. That's HR's job. Culture is HR's job. And that's so wrong. That's so wrong. It is everyone's responsibility. Culture is on everyone. You make or break the organization. Now, I do also have an opinion that there are no bad teams. There are just bad leaders. I think leaders are a heavy portion of culture at an organization. However, the process of developing that was one of the coolest that I've ever experienced because we had people from all over the organization involved in it. And so it wasn't just one person's stream of consciousness. It wasn't just the CEO saying, this is what I want, so now go make it, right? It was everyone got to bring their prior experiences to the table. We got to not only understand people's baggage with feedback and experiences with feedback and be empathetic to that, but we also got to take people's true experience and expertise with feedback. What's worked, what's not worked, what has been impactful, what has not been impactful. I'll never forget how many people in that room as we were developing it shared how when they got the good job, it was like the worst feedback that they could get, but it was positive. It was positive feedback, but it was the worst feedback. And so we developed this concept around there's positive general and there's positive specific, right? There's negative general and there's negative specific. And so it was a really beautiful thing because then at the end of it, we all got to have our stamp on it. Like I literally can't say to this day that I developed it. I got to do it with the team. And I mean, that's everything, right? Every sport you watch, there's no one, that's not just the quarterback that's doing it. There's a whole dynamic at play. So I love that approach. I think it's really important to build a culture.
I can tell by your energy and the tone that this was a useful thing to make it collaborative. You would recommend this for anyone who has a culture turnaround in front of them, is to pick maybe a slice of the business, like this was feedback, and come up with that checklist and come up with the conversations that it takes to us all to agree together. What are the core elements of that?
I've never met anyone who didn't want to be part of shifting culture in a positive way, ever. I've never, now what was important to them might have been, different to me. But I did an exercise at my last company where we got to redo the values of the organization. And we used an exercise where instead of the C-suite coming up with the values and kicking them down to the rest of the organization, we did a survey across the organization. We involved all of the plant employees. We sat down with them. We asked them what was important. We kind of distilled, it was probably over 2,100 pieces of information as to what was important to these employees. And then we created the values based on that. And so again, it doesn't have to be work that's done at the top. It actually halts. Majority of the work halts when it hits the top because that shouldn't be their focus. They should support it. They should make sure they agree with it. But the heart of the organization is people, right? Everybody always says our greatest asset is our people. And not allowing them to be part of that work, it's almost disrespectful in a way. It doesn't show them that you have faith in their ability to contribute to culture. So I would actually challenge most organizations to kick the work away from leaders, allow them to be executive sponsors, allow them to be support, make sure that there's nothing blocking their way, but also allow them to be part of the process.
I'm going to wrap up today's conversation to kind of put a period on that. When I was studying fast growth organizations, one of the things that came out of it was the importance of not just taking responsibility, but to take ownership. You've said it, and before we cut on the recorder, I think you've even said it since we've cut it on the recorder about everyone should take ownership of culture and whatnot. But when you involve others, they are included. Those that are not involved don't take as much ownership. Now, if they feel represented, they're still in there. So, not everyone can be a part of the checklist that's in front of you because it would be too difficult to do that. But the example of values, surveying the organization and trying to use that, people were included. And so they will take more ownership of the transformation if they are included. But if they're just handed it to them, someone else did it, someone they don't know, some consultant.
I didn't get to make the decision.
Yeah.
I would have done it differently, right? That's the attitude that's the culture you're creating by taking actions that way. I'm a huge believer in extreme ownership. Jocko Willink is one of my favorite. I don't know if you've read his stuff, but extreme ownership is, I don't know how you create a culture of ownership if you aren't allowing people to have the dignity to do the work. Puts the ownership on everyone.
Great way for us to finish today's conversation on culture matters. And I really appreciate you being here, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me, Jean. I hope something was valuable that I shared today. And I will end by saying, I don't know that I've met anyone who's actually figured culture out. I think that we do a lot of things really well, and I think things work, but I think at the end of the day, we're human, and we are all continuing to figure this journey out as the industry and the market changes. So keep that in mind as well. Give grace to yourself as you figure this out. And by no means am I an expert at it either. It's a learning curve every day. So thank you so much for having me.
Wow, another fantastic interview here on the podcast. I know I say that all the time if you're listening to more than one episode, but I just love what we're doing, and talking to Jamie about culture matters, and the insight she gave is really fantastic. Hopefully you took a lot of notes on this and got some value out of it. I know I did. So I appreciate you listening in here. If there's something that we can do for you to support you and your journey and your fast growth, the opportunity on the horizon, make sure you reach out to me, Gene@genehammett.com. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.